All right.
You kick it off.
All
You're gonna
right.
do great.
All right. Hey, so it's Monday, March 16th. Kirsten and I decided to record this. We wanted to go live, but we weren't able to organize all the coordinating and then getting in front of people. So we're recording it to get it out to you as fast as possible. There's so many people asking questions about, hey, I'm working from home. I'm now managing a remote team. I never have before. What kind of factors do I need to keep in mind? So we're recording this video webinar on tips for managing remote teams. So there's a lot of things that we want to keep in focus and as a leader, make sure that our teams are producing at the output that we're expecting, and realistically, come out of this troubled time as a leader in our team of teams, and have that growth potential with us. Let's be a little bit selfish. We want to make sure that we're moving ahead, but we also want to make sure our teams are moving ahead, that we're being productive and we're doing the right things at the right time, and we have the tools and mindset to get us to where we need to be. So just to kick off, and just like some of the biggest things that are out there is, I know remote work has a stigma. Having been a remote worker for a while and having managed remote teams, one of the things we did as we were hiring was really look out for people who we suspected might be really wanting to work from home so they could play Xbox or watch Netflix all day. And those people usually, honestly, were very obvious. So if you have a team of people that you're already working with, it is a concern, especially with the multiple distractions. I'm here in my office. I just switched roles with my wife. So I finished up my day, went out, worked with the kids. She was tutoring, and then we switched back. And so it's been a wild ride, and that's almost to be expected. However, all of us here are like really committed and concerned about making sure that we're having a really good output and creating enough value. And especially as everything is, becoming more stressful, as belts are tightening, we want to make sure that we're very efficient and we're doing the right things at the right time. So while there are a lot of distractions, family, laundry, dishes, Facebook, social media, I would say we'll get into it, but leading with trust and knowing that we have our teams and we know what to expect from them, that I don't think they're as big of a concern as a lot of people are thinking they are. And Kirsten, like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, you're doing this quite a bit, and even
Yeah.
in more situation.
This is my absolute normal lifestyle right now. And honestly, I think it takes, especially if you have a family, it takes a little bit more interaction with your partner or your significant other to do a little bit of coordinating, especially if you're doing any type of communication off business hours. For example, like Justin was just saying, my family is on East Coast time zone. So we had dinner and we started to get the kids together for bed, and now I'm up here doing this recording. So it's very flexible, but I have a strong support system at home, and then I really balance my time and really plan it out throughout the day, and that makes a really big difference. Like Justin was saying, I think some of those concerns that have been more traditional are really easy to eliminate up front when you have completely focused teams who know what the goal is and who are aligned with your vision. So we're going to really dive into those details about how to get your team aligned and how to work with your team members to optimize the results. And so we'll move in. You want to kick off with some of the benefits of remote teams that we see lately?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's almost ironic, but honestly, there are fewer sick days. So I did work with a team that was on premise most of the time, and one was really concerned because his son was very susceptible to any type of contagion. So he was very nervous about anybody who came to work sick, and we like habitually do that in the States. We do that a lot. We come into work like really sick, hoping to get a lot of work done. We're not really getting a whole lot of work done, and we're just endangering everybody, and it goes around the office and around their families, and it kind of compounds. By doing remote work, my family and I actually just got through, having kids. We were sick for the month prior, and now that there's a big contagion around. Actually, we've isolated ourselves for the most part for the last few weeks, so we've been pretty good. But ultimately, like, because it's so close and easy, I really haven't taken a sick day because I haven't needed to. I've been able to manage my day and my workload, but also manage, while I did get sick and I, might not have been at my top productivity, it was a lot easier. Now, obviously, I've never been late because of traffic. There was one instance where I was coming down the hallway and I had to give an extra hug to my daughter, but I think that was acceptable.
You know what? I feel like tying into that, there is a lot less time wasted. Not that it's not valuable in some respects, but a lot less time wasted just interacting with the people who come off the elevator. There is a lot of time that's in the office that's spent walking to the water cooler and back, walking to the printer and back, chatting with the person who is just passing through your office. So I feel like there's a lot of time that you actually end up saving because you're fully dedicated. You're either on or you're off. And so during that time that you're focused on work, you're actually a lot more productive because you know that there's other things waiting for you somewhere else. So you're going to stay focused on what you have to do during that time that you've committed to it.
Yeah, and that productivity is probably the key point to me for working remotely. I know when I am remote and working with a remote team, the thing that I'm really focused on is what is my end result that I'm going to be able to show that this is what I got done. And when I'm working with other teams that are on premise, like, what I usually find is there's a lot of people that are clocking in and clocking out, and you go to find out what they did. Like, they were working, but was there a result of it? And I think when you work remote, that mindset shifts of, they can't see me here. I need to produce something really amazing to show that I was doing something. And what we have found in our team is that it's definitely of that caliber where everybody's really producing really cool things, and you might not hear from somebody for like 4 to 6 hours, and all of a sudden, bam, and they're like, look what I just did. And this is so cool.
And then the energy actually grows from that. Whereas I think you have a really good point. Sometimes in an office setting, you aren't necessarily showing or sharing your results real time. So sometimes you even lose that momentum because you create something and then you actually share it or pass it to your manager or implement it a couple days later or a couple weeks later even. So I really love the real-time impact and the focus when we have remote teams like this. It just changes the atmosphere when you have engagement with your team members who are also remote.
So let's go skip ahead a little bit to setting expectations and guidelines, because I think that ties in really well. There's some, we really have to look at the position and the individual to decide how this is going to work. And ideally, we should have a remote worker policy that outlines some of these things. And this is something that can be created and grow over time. So don't think you have to nail it out of the gate. I would say it's more important to get something on the books in an SOP that's communicated effectively to the team and that is able to grow, whether it's in SharePoint or a Google Doc or something where it's easily accessible with a single source of truth. But part of that is going to be availability time windows where some roles are going to have to be, especially customer support, you start at 8, you end at 5, and you get an hour lunch, and you have these things broken out so that there's proper coverage for incoming calls and stuff like that. Others, in my role today, it's very flexible, and it's really about the work getting done. And so if we have a doctor's appointment or something of that nature, we can shift that around and feel a little bit more comfortable. We'll be thinking about the working hours and the flexible windows, like what is okay for you with your team and within the business.
The other thing I would say with that is definitely consider the size of your team. Sometimes when you have a larger team, a little bit more rigidity makes a difference. If you just have 1 or 2 team members and you're really in touch with your team members on a regular basis, that might be something you can have a little more flexibility with and meet their needs in addition to the business needs. So I've actually been in a position where I adjusted to working remotely and I negotiated with my boss what he needed from me and what would work well in my schedule. And we kind of developed that over time. And that's actually made a humongous difference for my quality of life. And then also my ability to just be fully focused when I'm working on work and provide results that are high quality. So that's made a difference. Just consider what your team size and the flexibility that each member kind of needs is.
That's a great point. I was with a team that was a larger team, and we had a wide range. Some people started at 7 or earlier, and some people started at 10. So, and then there was like, everybody kind of came in between, and everybody was leaving kind of at a gradient. The benefit to that is we had fantastic coverage. So we had a lot of people to field stuff. The problem was any type of meeting was almost impossible to schedule. So there's some positive and some negatives, but it's really something that your team will have to come up and do, and just be, I think everybody right now is very open to flexibility of, it could be one thing today and it could be something else. We're all learning as we go. So go at it with that mindset of, hey, yeah, and be transparent that this is what we intend to do now, but there's a very real possibility that's going to change as we learn to grow. And we want your input, like make sure that the team has a horse in the race, something in there so that they feel like they're contributing and it's a group effort.
Yeah, I like that. Actually, if you have that SOP that you are modifying as you go through the year, it's always good in a regular team meeting to bring that up and refer to it and ask how it's working for your team. Just getting that input makes a huge difference in your team feeling valued and really participating in developing something that's effective for everybody. We're gonna come back to talking a little bit more about meetings in a minute. So some other expectations and guidelines. I think we touched on responsiveness. Justin, do you have some other additional?
Yeah, I've definitely heard people, there's a couple different mindsets. The Tim Ferriss one, I highly don't recommend, which is the set an autoresponder that I'm going to reply to emails at 11 o'clock and 2 p.m. That just doesn't work. Everybody understands that you have stuff going on during your day. To really call it out, I think actually brings negative attention to it. So I would not go with that. I've heard other people require like a response within a few minutes to say that, okay, I got this and I'm working on it. I think that's actually over communicating it, like to the other degree. The things that I work on and do, like if I'm recording a webinar like this, it's entirely possible I won't see your email for an hour to an hour and a half because I'm doing something that is within my job role and is with, something that I need to be doing. But I might not get back to you right away. I think it's just have a realistic expectation that, hey, an email probably doesn't need to go unresponded to for a day or two. Like just try to get back, try to be responsive. And that responsiveness shows your availability and so on. We have mobile devices. I've definitely done it where I've gone to a dentist appointment, and while I was in the waiting room, I got an email and I responded to it. So that's something we have to figure out and put as part of the plan, like what is expected, what's, what is okay and not okay. But I'd say lead with trust again in that of just, if people are responding, that's a pretty good thing.
Well, and really, like you were saying, the leader sets the tempo for the entire team. And so if you are creating that culture of respect and honesty and trustworthiness, then your team is going to step up in that scenario. So I think you setting that example and really communicating that you are performing work as well, and that it's okay for you to respond an hour later because you're actually accomplishing things as well. So setting that just expectation with your team and leading by example makes a huge difference there.
Yeah, and look at that from that culture standpoint of leading by example on the unplugging side as well, where I've worked in an organization where the leaders were sending emails 10 and 11 o'clock at night. And so that set the tone and expectation for everybody to be checking emails all throughout the night. And it created this just horrible culture of just this overworking madness. And there were so many people that were just stressed out so much. And I don't think that was the culture that they were intending to build, but that's just what happened because that's what the leader did. So, it is okay to step away. And when you do that, be aware that that's what you're teaching your team to do, that, hey, don't work 12 hours a day, because unless they're salary, that could really cause some HR nightmare. So be sure that you're setting a tone for what is reasonable expectation for your team.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. And then along with expectations and guidelines, and we'll cycle back to this, is KPIs and metrics, and making sure that everything has a number, because it matters so much more when you're not clocking in and clocking out. And you just have to, like, your metric is the seat warm for 8 hours, that it's like a measurable result has been produced, but make sure that it's reasonable and something that's attainable. What?
Even if you have people who are clocking in 8 to 5, there should still be metrics and KPIs. Just to be very clear, we highly recommend that. And
That's fair.
However, in the remote scenario, it is even more important, because you're not touching base with them in person and you aren't tracking their hours in the same way. So KPIs, metrics, and goals make a huge difference in propelling your team forward, and really building that momentum, and also identifying where your team needs support. That is one of the hardest things, I think, about having a remote culture, is that sometimes people aren't willing to step up and say they're struggling, and you can't easily walk past their workspace and check in on that. And so creating a way to measure how your team is doing and how you might need to be able to rebalance your workload based on what is coming down the pipeline. Having KPIs and metrics will make a huge difference for that.
Perfect. And then that's probably a good place to do our tag of, we do Meet Inc. CEO. So MEINC.CEO. That's the website, no.com. And this is actually what we do, is we teach leaders how to implement those metrics, what the metrics should be, how they should be measured, and like what to do for those. So if you want to dive deeper into that, we have a lot of content around that. We
both love this aspect. If you can't tell our energy level here, metrics, goals, KPIs, that's what we live for. So if you need any support in that area, please reach out, look at our website, our Facebook page, talk to us, and we can help you in that area.
Excellent. Yeah. And then for that culture piece, I think one of the biggest things that we can do for the culture is, obviously lead by example, but how we interact with people. So in the meeting, I heard somebody say that they expect there to be more meetings, because you can't just drop in on somebody. You don't swing by, you don't see them at the water cooler, in the elevator, walking through their office to do something else. So you're going to have to formalize some of those connection points. So there are going to be more meetings, but encourage people to meet at the right time. So if there's a lot of emails going back and forth, just let them know when it's okay to say, stop the email chain, let's get together for 5-10 minutes. And then it's okay to book a 5 to 10 minute meeting rather than a full hour. And I think the default for most is like, let's book an hour meeting so we can go over this, and really go into each with an agenda of like, this is what I hope to get out of this meeting, so that everybody knows that there's value.
I really love that. That's actually one of my favorite things about being remote, is you can just set up a 10-15 minute meeting and you can be so productive in those couple minutes, because everybody's calling in with the intention of having that discussion, rather than rushing from one place to the next and trying to just follow up one meeting, get to the next meeting, and then not ever have time to be productive. So that makes a huge difference. The other thing I would say about culture, though, is make it a point to have fun with your team. And you really have to be intentional in a remote environment in order to make that happen. So that is one thing Justin and I do when we're talking, or with our other work teams. We go out of our way to get to know about our kids. We get to know about what was stressful in the day, and just checking in with how that person is feeling, what's going on in their personal life. It's not every meeting that we necessarily do that, but having a culture where you can have those interactions makes a huge difference in everybody's just engagement and enjoyment of their teammates, you know?
Yeah, and we didn't like we'll get to tools later, but we usually have in the teams that I'm in a random channel, like a channel called Random. That's just like all those kind of updates, those personal updates, you know, the funny memes, the stuff that's just like, you know, enhances that personality as a part of your workday. That makes it more fun. I would say too that with some of these tools, and we'll get into those, but what I've found is instead of booking meetings, I'll shoot off a quick message, and all like so many have like a built-in call video screen share that it you know, I can just say, hey, you know, let me know when you have a minute to go over blah 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 blah, and then we can, you know, as soon as that they're done with their meeting, they'll initiate that call, and we can talk for 5-10 minutes. So it doesn't have to be like a formal meeting, but we're able to get through that hurdle, past that blocker, and move on and both be productive in our days.
Yeah, I think that's great because in the office setting, and I've been in so many office areas that people struggle to even just pick up the phone. But one of the huge things about remote work is that people intentionally connect and do it more efficiently. So that's actually one of my favorite things is it's not a big deal to pick up the phone or show up for someone virtually, just, you know, through video chat, where in an office setting, if I've been in some sites where it's a 5-minute walk to get to the next building, and that walk very rarely happens. Or in the clean room when you have to actually completely gown up to see somebody face to face. It's completely with the amount of time that it takes to get to their desk and back. So remote makes it just so easy to pick up the phone or do a quick video conference. So.
Well, and I will say, it's funny you bring that up because I worked at a location that like each building had one door you could enter and exit from for security reasons. And so like I was up and down the steps, but it was fantastic because we were having this step count war. And so I was the guy who's like, if I need to ask the question, I'm at your desk, and I got like 20,000 steps a day, the days I was in the office. But I think that brings up another point of, you know, what to do if you're more of an introvert. Because I was able to make that call of like, hey, I'm going to your desk. If I'm doing a one-on-one, we're walking, we're talking, we're doing fun stuff. If I did a one-on-one while remote, I was still walking and talking. I have a Bluetooth headset. I would wear a collared shirt so the wind wouldn't block it. And, you know, I went through the whole rigmarole, but it was great because I got all my steps in. I was very active, and I was able to make use of the time where I'm just on the phone. I don't know if you can see, let me click here, but I actually have in my office weights and kettlebells and stuff like that, so that while I'm on calls, if I'm not the one speaking or presenting, I could be, you know, doing some weights and stuff. And actually the kids are starting to see it. So Kirsten, Vivian tonight was doing weighted burpees. She had little 2-pound weights, and she's 4. She's doing like these burpees. Like, that's awesome.
That's great. Well, since my office location travels, I don't have weights behind my computer every minute of the day. But I should start implementing that a little more frequently.
So what about for introverts? Because I think that is a challenge of when, like, to know when to reach out and to make those types of connections. So
go ahead.
So I know there's going to be some meetings that are mandatory, but I think there's some other ways that we can like bring some interaction and make people feel a little bit more welcome, and to create those gaps when somebody on the team is more introverted and might not be reaching out. Some ways that we can build a culture of connectivity.
Are you asking me for them?
Well, we were riffing on someone last night, but I heard, there was one company that did like a regular standing Zoom meeting where anybody could join in, and it would just kick off when somebody joined in, and it would, like, they called it coffee time. And so it'd be like 9 a.m., 8 a.m. or whatever, and everybody would sit, have coffee and chat. And it'd be like this with, you know, the multiple heads, and you could talk back and forth and you get to see people. And then they had a happy hour occasionally where you can sit back and, you know, it's well after 5 years. So, you know, having a glass of wine.
So I love those ideas. Honestly, that enhances the culture and it creates those relationships that you don't build otherwise. And I was negative earlier about the office environment where you're getting interrupted more frequently, but those interruptions are what develop those relationships. And
Mhm.
so if you can think of ways to create those relationships like that coffee hour or coffee corner, might not be an hour long, but
Hopefully.
or happy hour, which could be an hour long. But the other thing I would say is, as a leader in particular, if you have team members who are a little more introverted, honestly, instant messenger is a great way to interact with them on a little less intimidating basis for just regular check-ins. Obviously, there's going to be other layers that you want to add to it for much more detailed information. But if it's a quick discussion, then maybe that's all you need, and that makes it more comfortable for that individual. But then you're still both able to have the interaction that you need.
Yeah.
So know your team members and know what makes them a little bit more comfortable as you work through creating this culture that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and it brings up a really interesting point about webcam, because it's something that some people feel comfortable with and some people don't. I think it's something that like HR should be involved with the decision regarding that. I lean towards making it mandatory, because as soon as you don't make it mandatory, nobody uses it, and you miss a lot of the face-to-face, which is really valuable. I know we lost somebody fairly recently. We were trying to do more webcam whenever we interfaced it with the team, because she was feeling very disconnected. She felt like she felt alone in her home. And ultimately, she decided that she wanted to get back into teaching and real estate, and doing, in those environments where she could be face to face with people. And I think by encouraging people to use their webcam, that it creates that bond that they're looking for, even if they're not, officially comfortable with it. We're obviously recording this one, but you don't have to record it. Actually, I would, probably, position don't record by default, and then that takes a lot of the pressure off of hey, we're just interfacing. It's just a chat. It's not a big deal. Another thing is virtual co-working. That's something that I did with some of my mastermind group. Is we would, on occasion, reach out and ping each other in a group channel and say, hey, who wants to crush out some stuff? And so we'll be kind of talking as we're doing stuff and asking questions back and forth. But like, we are so hyper focused on getting stuff done, and almost make a competition of like, would you get done? Would you get done? In that block. And it's really neat.
No way.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. and because it's virtual, it could be like whenever you can. I've had it definitely where I'm trying to knock out a whole bunch of script or marketing material or text, and it helps to have some music on, but also to have somebody there and like, hey, what about this? And then bounce some ideas up, and you just right back to going. So it was great to have that type of dialogue and cohesion together, and know that we're both working really on point. And then so if we see one of us staring off into space, hey, what are you doing? Let's get back on it.
So one of the things that I want to mention for one of the other teams that I'm virtually a part of at the moment, it's a hybrid team. So probably 3/4 of the team is in an office setting, and a couple of us are remote. Now, I think that is something that's probably going to become more and more common right now moving forward, where you have that hybrid scenario. It's really easy to forget about your remote resources and forget that their needs might be a little different. We have weekly meetings, and there's never been a proposal to have a video conference, and the remote people are coming from different places. And that might actually really enhance our ability to get to know each other a little bit better and interact better. The people who are in person, of course, they're having that face-to-face interaction regularly. And to be honest, sometimes it's nice. It's the first thing in the meeting. The meeting is first thing in the morning. Sometimes it's nice for me to not have to get clothes on yet in order to and just hang out in my pajamas. But if we set that up where there was video conferencing, that actually might make a really big difference for our team engagement, because I don't know all those team members quite as well as I know some of my other coworkers who I interface with on a really daily basis. So keep that in mind if you have a setting that's similar.
That actually reminds me, my brother works for a company and they have a mandate that if you're working remotely for the day, your webcam has to be on, you have to be in this one meeting, and basically somebody polices it. And that is a really weird culture to set. So like, you know,
Don't go overboard.
Yeah, let's keep it real. Keep it normal.
Although, if you have your webcam on, it's okay to just get dressed from the top half of you, and the bottom half can be in sweats. That's
just be decent, because stuff has happened. Like you get up to go to the door, and like, and then you're on YouTube. All right. Let's talk about the types of meetings. So there's going to be your regular meetings that just normally happen with different groups, different projects, different things like that. Those are the meetings that you're probably in already, that they're just going virtual. You should be doing a Scrum meeting in the morning, making sure everybody's on point. It shouldn't take more than 5-10 minutes. So it's a really quick meeting. I think video, like you said, would be a great addition to that, so everybody sees what they're doing. And you can kind of tell, like if somebody's laying in bed, like that person probably needs to get moving. That has occasionally been me. A weekly meeting, I really advocate for, a short, potentially 30 minutes, depends on the team, meeting just to bring everybody in alignment, make sure everybody knows what's going on within the team, within the organization. That's really helpful. As a leader, you should be doing one-on-ones with each team member. I like to do those walking. I encourage my team members to do that as well. So we're both outdoors. We're on our Bluetooth, walking around. I always kept notes in Evernote on my phone. So as we're talking, I had those notes. I had those action items from the previous week. I had all that prepped before I took off. And I think it added value. I definitely, being face-to-face, you could whiteboard and do some stuff. If we did need to do that, I would make sure that I was in a room that was conducive to that, where we could do a whiteboard, but it was private. Be aware that a one-on-one should be private, so nobody should be nearby. If I did it walking around, I was always found a trail or something that was pretty remote, so I wasn't worried about anybody overhearing. Also wasn't worried about connectivity. Make sure this is a different world. You need to make sure you have connectivity. And so some of the trails would be, maybe more difficult or maybe more loud. There was one building that had, they were tearing sheet metal or something. It was horrible. So I just thought like I'd go the other direction. But be aware of those other things so that you can create a safe environment for a deeper communication on a one-on-one. A lot of times I've seen where it's just like, rattling off what they're doing that week or what they did. And it really, we'll go into this more in the Meet Inc. CEO training, but you should be looking for a connection with your team member and to make sure that you're helping them get where they need to be and to level up. It is really easy to miss that, but that's really the value you bring.
That's actually exactly what I wanted to mention is just, I think with remote working and leading a team who is remote, sometimes it's really a lot harder to be intentional about helping your team grow. And that is absolutely invaluable. Not only does it help your team grow for your projects, but also developing your team members helps them feel valued and feel like they have, that you're investing in them, but then they also have opportunities moving forward. So there's certainly, if you find a theme amongst your team members, having a weekly meeting and doing some of that team growth actually is really valuable. You don't have to necessarily do one-on-one all the time. I have, over time, we've had different types of, what are they called? What are they called when you read a book? Like book reviews?
Book club?
Book clubs. So over
We have
time,
that at my team right now as we do a book
got
club.
some of this. So over time, I've in different team groups that we've reviewed different books so that we could, as a group, learn the concepts that would help all of us grow. But then, obviously, during those one-on-one sessions, as Justin was mentioning, that direct growth makes a whole difference in having your team trust you, respect you, be on board with where you're leading, and also just give the feedback about what they're looking for even further. So I think I wouldn't discount that at all. And I think that's one of the most important things to keep in mind that's harder to do from my perspective with a virtual team.
Yeah, and there's two other things that come out of that. One is accountability. And to that point, Kirsten, have you ordered your book yet?
Sitting in Amazon.
And two, in Meeting CEO, we actually are building out a lot of these meeting trainings for the team meetings. So it's just things that I've come across in managing other teams that help set the tone. So we'll be putting those up there as a bonus, and the things to go in and look. And if you have any ideas, man, we'd love to see them. Put them in the comments below, and we'll make sure that we develop those out too.
Yeah, that would be great.
The next section is, for me, kind of one of the fun ones, maybe one that I get too wrapped up in, which is tools. To start out with,
Justin loves tools.
I love tools.
I have learned more tools working with Justin than any other time in my life.
So when I was a kid, like my favorite thing, we'd go to the art store because my mom was an artist. It was Amsterdam Art in Berkeley. And like I would go through all the mechanical pencils. I tried every one, all the different sizes. And like it was my goal to find like the perfect mechanical pencil. Link in the comments below. So there's a couple things like to start out, there's just going to be positions that are not suited for remote work. And so for those, they're on desktops. Like as this is coming through, I mean, realistically, it's almost easier anymore for an organization to buy laptops. And in my experience, I've seen that more and more is laptops are becoming more and more pervasive because the need to send a technician to a desk to fix something is kind of ridiculous, where a laptop is almost hot swappable. So it makes it so much easier. So you're going to find a lot more people have laptops, usually anymore with a webcam standard and Bluetooth. The thing that isn't there is a mic and headset. You can see Kirsten actually isn't using one and sounds perfectly fine. I know like my kids are in the other room. I don't know if you can hear them. I can't hear them now, but I have heard them throughout this call. This is great. It has a mic. It's Bluetooth. I do a lot of calls, and they're like an hour long. So I'm pacing around my office. Like I said, I'm lifting weights. I actually just got some Jabra Bluetooth, like so that I could be lifting weights without it interfering with this. So it really depends. If it was the company buying it, you'd probably go one direction and probably a lot cheaper. These were like $100, but I bought them. If you're using Macs, the AirPods are great. I personally, I don't want to use the super high Bluetooth because the more power the Bluetooth had, it's like right in your ear. I just, I default to like, I'll go with easier. I don't know if it's good or bad. There's arguments for both sides. I just, go with lighter and easier. And this is so convenient. I love that they retract, so I can listen on both. The sound is really good listening, but also I really look for noise reduction on calls. I have seen that the trend lately is more towards an audiophile who's listening. But if you're a remote worker, you really need to focus on something with 4 microphones if you can. The reason being is because you have the 2 that are listening, you have the 2 speakers that you're hearing from, but there's going to be 2 microphones that are listening to the ambient noise and essentially canceling that out when you're speaking. So if I go for a walk and I'm doing a one-on-one, there's going to be, this is actually better, and I'll wear a hoodie, of course, in the really hot area, but there's things I can do to reduce the wind noise and stuff so that it doesn't come across. Do you have a favorite one, Kirsten, or?
No, I mean, honestly, my laptop is like, it records the sound really well. And
No?
I have a habit of really just removing myself from my children and my family, and really just being isolated. So I personally practice that just because it makes it easier for me to focus, and it also obviously makes the call quality more clear. So it depends on the day as to whether or not I choose to use a micro headset. But if I am in an optimal location, then I won't end up doing that usually.
Nice. Yeah, and the location makes a big difference. So obviously my door's over there. I keep looking this direction. We replaced the door with solid core doors to try to reduce the sound. I have a tile hallway, so it's like the sound has this like amplification effect against the door. So there's other things you can do. There are egg crate stuff you can buy on Amazon for really cheap. The best thing that I saw was somebody went to a thrift store, bought a bunch of towels, used towels, and they stapled them to a frame and then put that behind or nested in a really nice canvas print or a G-Clay, or something that looked nice but was canvas. It was bulky, and so that sound deadening was behind it, so it was visually appealing and it didn't look weird. And that was really effective. So that's actually on my list of something to do.
Good idea.
As far as the phone goes, though, everybody's a little bit different. I have a coworker who's a developer who goes to Italy for a month at a time. It's actually a cool story, but he uses Vonage. And so he has an actual phone and his rig that he does, and he's able to do it remotely. I would say anymore, my recommendation, and this would be a company purchase, would be to be using a tool like Grasshopper or RingCentral. That's a voice over IP solution that turns into an app on your phone and has a desktop client, so that you could be engaging no matter where you are in those different things, but more importantly, that you could shut off. The company I'm with now, I'm using my cell phone, which is great, but the problem from a company standpoint, from a team standpoint, is now we have a lot of customers that have my cell phone as their primary point of contact. If I leave for any reason, or if I go on vacation, my cell phone is still their primary point of contact, and that's not ideal. So if I had something that was a voice over IP phone, that was an app that I could set guardrail hours against, that would actually be a lot easier for me. I think it would be a lot easier for the company and the team. And if something happened and I was hit by a bus, they could assign that phone number to another individual, and then that person would always be getting the calls. I think that's a really, really great way to go. And the systems anymore have the ability to do those dial forwards. So you'd have extensions that you could dial through to get to. And they're like crazy cheap. I think it's like $6 a month per seat, per user per seat. It's so cheap compared to paying for a cell phone. The bring your own device thing is great. I love that somebody will pay my cell phone bill, but realistically, they could pay $6 and just have the expectation that I have a phone. And like, hey, if you don't have a phone, like that's on you. We'll send you a laptop, and there's this free app that you can download and use on your desktop. And I have a lot of friends that use that, and it's great. Google Voice is another one that you can use to do that.
The other key thing is that even works with non-smartphones. So those individuals who are still in the Stone Age usually have a dumb phone, and it still works for them.
Cool. Yeah. Because it can forward through. I actually did that a long time ago for another company I was at. All right. So hardware, to continue in that, if you do any type of presenting, I 100% recommend getting a second monitor. They're like $200. It's totally worth it, because your main monitor is where you're going to get all your notifications, your emails. I actually had a project manager who, you can do the Southern, bless his heart, but he's presenting to a customer. We're all watching, and he's getting these bug notifications on our software, and we're like, dude, What are you doing? Shut down Outlook if you're presenting your main screen. But yeah, it was surreal. So have a second monitor. It's very inexpensive, and it's really handy. I mean, if you're at an office, you're usually going to have two. So one for your email, one for what you're working on, or an Excel sheet and what you're keying it into, or vice versa. Yeah, just required. Printers, paper, toner, shipping equipment. Some jobs are going to require those things. It's just so easy to get that to the person who needs to get it done, or reimburse them for it. All right. Internet connectivity, dedicated office space, we kind of talked to. Let's wrap it up pretty quick. So desktop, we talked about calendars on your phone. Like, you're able to, like, any apps anymore are very mobile, so be prepared for that. One thing I did do, which is really handy for a time like now, is when I had to work remote, I just took my desk phone. That was a requirement at the office. They didn't have a voice over IP solution, and I set it to forward all my calls to my cell phone. And so eventually everybody recognized my cell phone when I called them. I just never used my desktop. And as I said, I was up and down in different buildings, so I was never at my desk anyway. Digital file management. My favorite is OneDrive. It comes with Office. You get a terabyte of free storage when you buy an Office subscription. So I actually let my Dropbox subscription lapse because it just didn't make sense anymore. Really, I would go back to who owns and maintains it. If you're on Google Drive, that's fantastic. That works excellent as well. But just like set somebody in charge to maintaining that folder structure and creating some sanity around it. I lean towards everything is hyper searchable anymore. So the 1980s 30 nested folders just doesn't need to happen. Just don't. Obviously, for web conferencing, we like Zoom. There's also GoToMeeting, WebEx. Google has Hangouts. There's a bunch of different options. I still go back to Zoom. It's what I use every day, all day, every day. WebEx was really nice, and it had a feature where it would call me. I could set it up and call me. But Zoom is like $15 a month. I mean, it's so cheap.
A lot of teams who might be going virtually now already have something in place. And realistically, if your environment is already using that tool, then that's probably the one you'll end up going with. But all of them are viable options, honestly.
So we have a lot more to go through. So let's do another one of these. But I want to end with probably something that's really, really important that you might be thinking about now. If you haven't, it could be a really big deal, which is cybersecurity. There's something called a virtual private network, or VPN. I don't have a provider to recommend right now, but I think TunnelBear is highly touted. There's a number of them out there. Your company probably has one that they're working through to go through, but make sure that everybody is using that VPN, especially as they go and remote becomes less of staying at home and going out into Starbucks or these random places with these networks that could be literally anything. That is the way that you're going to secure your company's data, because there are quite literally apps to download on your phone that will break into a computer. So it's almost crazy not to use it. I've taken to using Opera as an internet browser because it has VPN built in, and it just makes it seamless and easy. I don't have to worry about if I'm at Starbucks. I can pay my mortgage and feel fairly comfortable that nobody's getting anything. The other piece of that is LastPass. A lot of people are accustomed to using 1Password. When I was really snazzy, I had 3, and I for different levels, like for all the social media stuff, it'd be this like lame one, and then for my banking, I had this really cool one, and but they were all kind of the same. I'm getting notifications all the time that stuff gets hacked. I started using LastPass, and that's been a game changer. One, it remembers them all for me. So I just remember the last password I need to remember, which is to get into LastPass. And then I have it create like some gnarly 24-character ugly thing, and I have no hope of ever remembering. And it just fills it in for me. Because I have an Android, it'll actually use biometrics, so my fingerprint, to log me into any app that I want to. So let's end on that of just being like be aware that one, lead with trust with your team, and give them the freedom to figure this out. Realize that we're all figuring this out as you're going along. Make sure that everybody knows kind of the expectations, and start building this together in a centralized repository where everybody can get to it and it can be changed, and it's not a document in an email that gets forwarded around and there's 40 different copies of it. Bring it all into a single source of truth. And if you have any questions, absolutely, hit us in the comments below. We will get notified of them, and we're really excited to see what you guys have. And check out meinc.ceo. We put a lot of work into this exact situation of wanting to turn managers into leaders. And it's hard to manage a team that's distributed and remote, but it is not hard to lead a team that's distributed and remote. And Kirsten, what other things would you have people part with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a leader, I would really just impart on you that your team members could actually benefit and have a happier work experience. You can have a stronger culture by going remote, and ultimately everyone's quality of life increases. I think Justin started off really early on about mentioning he's never been late because of traffic. Honestly, we both have lived in Southern California, and the traffic there is horrendous. And not having to wrestle with that at the beginning of the day or the end of the day is one of the best things ever. So there's so many benefits from working remote. And as a leader, you get to tap into these, and your human resources are your best resources. So enjoy the journey. Any questions you have, please reach out. And we are really excited if you need any other support with helping develop your team or developing yourself. We're here for you, and we are passionate about this. So please connect with us. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great night, everybody.